Okay, so you want to become a medieval executioner. You already know the picture. A hooded figure, an axe, a crowd gathered in a town square, coins pressed into a gloved hand after the work is done. It looks like the darkest job in history, and also, strangely, one of the steadiest. Every town needs one. Every court sentences someone. Surely the money is good and the work never stops. Here's the document that ruins the picture. In the German city of Nuremberg, a man named Frantz Schmidt kept a journal across 45 years on the job, recording every execution and punishment he carried out in his own hand. It survives. And reading it, the first thing you notice isn't the violence. It's the accounting. FEs listed beside names. Expenses subtracted. Years where the work barely paid at all. Frantz Schmidt didn't retire rich. He spent decades petitioning the city council for something that had nothing to do with money, the restoration of his family's honor. That's the detail the romantic picture leaves out entirely. This job could make you a modest living. What it could never buy back was your place among other people. First, understand the paradox at the center of this profession. The executioner is a sworn officer of the city, appointed by contract, paid a fixed salary from the public purse, and simultaneously one of the most despised human beings in it. Legal codes across German-speaking Europe classified the executioner's trade as unhörlich. Dishonorable, a formal legal category that also caught gravediggers, tanners and knackers, the men who handled corpses, hides and dead animals. This wasn't casual prejudice. It was written into law. An executioner's children could be barred from apprenticeships in ordinary guilds. His household could be required to live outside the town walls or in a specific marked house. In some towns, other citizens wouldn't share a drinking cup with him. You are not just taking a job. You are accepting a hereditary legal stain that follows your family for generations. So why would anyone take the post? Because unlike almost every other trade in this world, it comes to you fully salaried, fully secure, and almost impossible to be fired from. Nuremberg's council records show the position paid a base annual salary, a fixed sum, regardless of how many executions occurred that year, the closest thing to guaranteed employment in the entire medieval and early modern economy. Add to that a furnished house, sometimes rent-free, because the city needed you living where it could find you at short notice. Compare that to the carpenter or the mason, whose income vanished the moment work dried up. The executioner's base pay never did. That security is the first real number in this business, and it's a genuinely good one. Now look at what that base salary actually had to cover. It wasn't just showing up for the sentence. The city expected the executioner to maintain and supply his own equipment, blades, ropes, irons, whatever the sentence required, and to keep it in working order at his own expense. A botched execution, a dull blade, a rope that failed, wasn't treated as bad luck. It reflected on the executioner's competence, and in some documented cases provoked public anger directed squarely at him rather than at the court that passed the sentence. You are the last visible link in a chain of justice, and every failure in that chain, however caused, lands on your reputation and sometimes your pay, beyond the base salary. Schmidt's journal shows a second income stream. Piece rate FEs for each execution and each lesser punishment, branding, flogging, torture applied at a magistrate's order. These FEs varied by the severity and method of the sentence and were paid case by case on top of the salary. In a busy year, in a city gripped by a crime panic or working through a backlog of sentenced criminals, this piece income could genuinely add up. In a quiet year, with few serious crimes reaching sentencing, the executioner's total income could shrink toward little more than the bare salary and the rent-free house. His income, in other words, rose and fell with the crime rate of the city he served, an unusually grim variable for any business to depend on, and there's a second job folded invisibly into the first. Executioners across German-speaking towns commonly also held the post of knacker, responsible for disposing of dead livestock and stray animals within the city, a duty tied to the same legal category of dishonorable work. This wasn't a side hustle you chose. It came bundled with the position because the same legal and social framework that made you fit to touch a condemned body made you fit, in the eyes of the law, to handle carcasses too. It paid modestly on a per-animal basis, recorded in some town ledgers. But it also meant your household's income depended on a second grim variable entirely separate from the court calendar. How many horses and cattle in the district happened to die that season? Here is where the story gets genuinely strange and where the real money sometimes hid. Executioners across Europe were widely believed, and in Schmidt's documented case, demonstrably practiced, to possess real medical knowledge and intimate, hands-on understanding of human anatomy that came directly from their sanctioned work with the body. Frantz Schmidt's own later petitions and city records describe him treating patients, setting bones, and dispensing remedies, activity that appears to have continued for years, quietly overlapping with, and eventually outlasting, his official duties. In many towns across the period, condemned criminals' body parts, fat, blood, bone, were believed to carry medicinal or magical power, and a black market existed for them that put money directly into an executioner's pocket outside any official fee schedule, precisely because his unique legal access to the body made him the only reliable supplier. The city paid him to end life. The public, quietly and often against its own church's teaching, paid him again for what was left over. Notice what all of this means for the actual shape of the business. The official salary was steady but modest. The piece rate fees were real but unpredictable, tied to crime. The NACA duties were grim, small, and separate. And the medical practice and body part trade, unofficial and documented in most towns' formal accounts, and legally precarious, could in some cases become the largest and steadiest income of all, precisely because it didn't depend on anyone being sentenced to die. The most reliable money in this profession came from the part of it the job description never mentioned. Now weigh the cost side, and it's not measured only in coin. The social exclusion was total and largely permanent. Guild membership was closed to an executioner and, crucially, to his children, cutting off the ordinary route to respectable trade for the next generation. Marriage was difficult outside a narrow circle of other dishonorable families. So executioner dynasties formed across generations, marrying among gravediggers, knackers, and other executioners, because almost no one else's family would have them. Frantz Schmidt's own life shows the true cost of this arrangement most clearly. His single documented goal across decades of competent, careful service wasn't a bigger house or a higher salary. It was legal rehabilitation, a formal petition to have his family's honor restored so his children could enter ordinary trades. It succeeded only after his retirement, granted by the Holy Roman Emperor himself after 45 years of exemplary service. That is the real price of this job, not what it cost you. What it cost your children before they were even born. There's also the danger that never shows up in any wage record. An executioner working publicly, visibly on behalf of an unpopular verdict was a target. Crowds at public punishments could turn violent, and there are documented cases across the period of executioners assaulted or threatened by mobs who believed a sentence unjust, with the officer of the court, not the judge, who passed the sentence, absorbing the crowd's rage in person. Your salary didn't come with anything resembling protection for that risk. It came with the assumption that you would simply absorb it, because absorbing unpleasant necessity on behalf of a town that despised you for it was. In the end, the entire job.so run the ledger, reconstructed from what Schmidt's journal and town council records actually show. In a steady year, the base salary and house cover a modest but genuinely secure living, better in raw security than most skilled trades of the period, since it cannot vanish in a bad harvest or a slow season the way a craftsman's income can. Add ordinary piece rate fees from a normal caseload, and the household sits comfortably, if unglamorously, above bare subsistence. In a busy year, a crime wave or a backlog of sentences, piece income spikes, and if the executioner also maintains a quiet medical practice on the side, this can be the most profitable period of his career, even as public unease about him deepens in step with the volume of his public work. In a quiet year, income shrinks toward the bare salary alone, and the household leans harder on the knacker duties and whatever medical fees the town's residents are willing to pay a man they won't otherwise acknowledge in the street. None of these scenarios, good year or bad, ever restored what the job took on day one. Frantz Schmidt died having achieved something almost no man in his position ever did, an emperor's decree lifting his family's dishonor. Most executioners' families carried the stain for generations, wealthy or poor, salaried or struggling, because the ledger this profession really kept wasn't written in coin at all. It was written in who would sit at your table, who would marry your daughter, and who would let your son learn an honest trade. Look at the post one last time with the romantic image switched off. It paid a real salary, one of the steadiest in its world. It came with real housing, real security, and a real second income in a black market the job itself created. And it cost, permanently and by design, the one thing money in this period could never buy back once the law had taken it. The executioner was never simply the last name on a court sentence. He was proof that a town could pay a man handsomely for his hands, while refusing, for generations, to shake one of them.